November 17th, 1558. As dawn spreads its first light over St. James's Palace in London, a woman lies on her deathbed. This is no ordinary figure. This is Mary Tudor, Queen of England. In just 2 hours, she will be gone. Yet, unlike the usual royal passings, her final breath goes unnoticed by the attendants who have kept vigil for 5 years. Mary ruled with unwavering faith and ruthless determination. Under her command, hundreds of Protestants perished by fire. She spent those years desperately seeking an heir, only to fail repeatedly. Now, at 42, her body has turned against her in ways that would horrify even the harsh standards of Tudor medicine. To truly grasp the terror of her last months, we must look further back. Mary had been fighting against her own body since she was 14. For decades, illness shadowed her life, and November 1558 was simply the culmination of that long battle. Picture August of that year, 3 months before her death. Mary is in her chamber at Richmond Palace, her abdomen distended, barely allowing her to stand. Her attendants murmur that perhaps the Queen is finally expecting a child. But Mary knows this swelling all too well. Twice before, it had signaled nothing but disappointment, humiliation, and the cruel sense that God mocked her hopes. Dr. Thomas Hick, one of her physicians, examines her. He notes the yellowing of her skin, the slight protrusion of her eyes, and the deepening rasp of her voice. In his private journal, he records that her old disease has returned with vengeance. These 3 words, her old disease, would come to define her final months. England in 1558 is in crisis. London suffers from an influenza epidemic that has killed thousands. Recent harvests have failed, leaving the population hungry and desperate. At court, the tension is palpable. Everyone knows Mary is dying, and that her Protestant half-sister, Elizabeth, is poised to succeed her. Mary's husband, Philip II of Spain, remains absent in Brussels, ignoring her letters and pleas. Meanwhile, at Hatfield House, Elizabeth waits, fully aware that the moment she has anticipated for 5 years is near. Courtiers secretly begin to visit her under cover of night, deserting Mary's household as if abandoning a sinking ship. Even Mary's closest ally, Cardinal Reginald Pole, is failing. Sick with quartan fever likely, malaria, he and Mary, the architects of England's Catholic restoration, are dying nearly simultaneously, signaling the imminent collapse of their religious vision. By September 1558, Mary's physical state is nightmarish. She cannot recognize familiar faces, calling instead for the dead. Her mother, Catherine of Aragon, her former governess, Margaret Pole, and most heartbreakingly, her absent husband, Philip. Her attendants lie gently, telling her he is on his way, hiding the cruel truth that Philip has written of her in the past tense while she still lives, for decades. Her body had betrayed her, likely suffering from severe endometriosis and a pituitary tumor causing phantom pregnancies. Mary endured constant pain, vomiting, and near fainting with every cycle. By 1558, her abdomen swelled with fluid, her liver struggled, and hallucinations and confusion plagued her. Modern experts suggest she was likely battling advanced ovarian cancer with possible metastasis, even surrounded by her remaining attendants. Mary's life had become a tableau of suffering and slow decay. By the time she was moved to St. James's Palace in October Fewer than 50 people remained to care for her out of a once vast household of 400. Her final days were marked by total blindness, excruciating pain, and intermittent fever, yet she remained conscious, enduring every moment of her body's betrayal. By mid-November 1558, Mary Tudor's suffering had reached its peak. On November 13th, 4 days before her death, her lady-in-waiting Jane Darma held her hand as Mary's blind eyes seemed to focus on something invisible. A faint, serene smile appeared on her lips as she whispered about children, little angels playing and singing. These visions were not idle delirium. Mary described details with clarity, recalling their games and clothing. For a woman who had longed for children and endured phantom pregnancies, these spectral visions were either a final comfort or a cruel reminder of what she never had. Cardinal Pole, dying miles away, experienced similar visions of light and heavenly music, suggesting a mysterious parallel in their final moments. November 15. 2 days before her passing, Mary insisted on making her last confession to Father John Feckenham. It took 3 hours, not because of lengthy sins, but because she kept lapsing in and out of consciousness. She detailed precise instructions for her funeral, requesting burial beside her mother, Catherine of Aragon, funding masses for her soul, and specifying the number of candles to be lit. Yet all present knew that Elizabeth would soon ascend the throne, and these Catholic rites would never come to pass. On the night of November 16th, Mary received the extreme unction. Father Feckenham anointed her with holy oils on her eyes, ears, lips, hands, and feet, each touch an agony on her hypersensitive skin. The room, lit only by flickering candles, whose smoke made breathing even more difficult, bore witness to her labored breaths and the sudden, fleeting grips of her hand before it fell limp. Then came the final morning, November 17th, 1558, between 4 and 5 a.m. As Father Feckenham elevated the host during Mass, Mary, blind for weeks, responded clearly to the sacred words, "Lamb of God, who takes away the sins of the world, have mercy on us." Her voice was strong and steady, a sudden clarity that stunned all who watched. She somehow focused on the elevated host, smiled peacefully, and then, quietly, her body gave out. There were no dramatic last words, no convulsions, just the gentle cessation of breath. For several minutes, attendants thought she had merely fallen asleep, until Dr. Hick confirmed her death. The practical and symbolic aftermath followed swiftly. Sir Nicholas Throckmorton, seeing the Queen's body still warm, removed her coronation ring and sped to Hatfield to present it to Elizabeth. Meanwhile, Cardinal Pole died later that evening, marking the simultaneous end of England's Catholic Restoration architects. Mary's body underwent the standard Tudor royal preparation: washing, embalming, removal of organs, and filling her abdomen with spices and preservatives. Embalmers discovered nearly 2 gallons of fluid and masses of tumors throughout her reproductive organs, a grim testament to her prolonged suffering. Her funeral, nearly a month later, on December 13th, was elaborate yet carefully choreographed by Elizabeth. Mary's body lay in state at St. James's Palace, hundreds of candles burning in the chapel, and a wax effigy of her swollen abdomen atop the coffin. The procession through London included mourners, heralds, and symbolic breaking of her royal regalia. In Westminster Abbey, Bishop John White delivered a sermon acknowledging Mary's status as queen in her own right, a rare defense of female sovereignty for 1558. Yet Mary was buried in a vault alone, separated from her beloved mother, her legacy overshadowed by Elizabeth, who would later be placed atop her sister in the same vault. Philip II of Spain, distant and cold, mourned only lightly before pursuing marriage negotiations with Elizabeth, demonstrating the same utilitarian detachment he had shown in life. Meanwhile, Elizabeth dismantled Mary's Catholic restoration, repealing her laws, removing altars, and reframing Mary's reign in history as Bloody Mary, a fanatic whose actions were distorted for political legacy, despite attempts to erase her. Mary's suffering was preserved in private memoirs, funeral effigies, and medical records, revealing a woman who endured decades of chronic pain, hallucinations, and betrayal. Her death was a quiet human tragedy, a queen abandoned, tormented by her own body, yet finally granted a moment of clarity and peace before slipping into history.